Okay, let's get into it. We're doing a deep dive today into Proverbs chapter 16.
Right.
And this chapter, it really hits on this tension, doesn't it? Between, our plans and maybe a higher influence, and how our character fits in.
Exactly. It's fascinating because it provides this framework for thinking about what we do versus how things actually turn out.
Mm.
And it puts a huge emphasis on like our motives, integrity,
Yeah,
wisdom.
timeless stuff, really. Practical for life, work, how we talk to each other.
Definitely. So let's maybe start with that core idea. It pops up right away.
Okay, yeah. Verse 1 says, "To man belong the plans of the heart, but from the Lord comes the reply of the tongue." And then just a bit later, verse 9, it's almost the same idea.
In his heart, a man plans his course, but the Lord determines his steps. Yeah.
What strikes me is it doesn't say planning is bad, it sort of affirms it, right? We
Yeah.
think, we strategize.
Absolutely.
And
It acknowledges that's just what we do. We make plans, but
But then there's the kicker, the outcome, the actual path taken. That's not entirely down to us.
right. The reply of the tongue, the determined steps. It points to something beyond our immediate control.
It makes you wonder, how much control do we really have?
Well, it seems to push towards a certain humility, maybe. Not giving up, but recognizing that other factors are at play, whether you call it circumstance or something more divine.
Like verse 33, even with casting lots, which seems random.
It's framed as being ultimately guided. It's kind of about letting go of needing total certainty.
Okay, so that's the outward plan versus outcome. But then it shifts inward pretty intensely, verse 2. That one stops you. All a man's ways seem innocent to him.
But motives are weighed by the Lord. Yeah, that's a tough one.
Because we're so good at justifying ourselves, aren't we? Making our actions look okay, at least to ourselves.
We really are. But this verse cuts through that. It says the real measure isn't the action itself necessarily, but the hidden why behind it. Our self-assessment, maybe not so reliable.
So integrity, the why, is key, which leads to verse 8. Better a little with righteousness than much gain with injustice.
That hits hard against how we often measure success, right? It's countercultural almost.
Totally. It's saying how you get something matters more than how much you get.
Exactly. Because righteousness, according to Proverbs here, brings things that sheer wealth can't. Look at verse 7. Being pleasing to the Lord can even bring peace with enemies. That's valuable. Way more than cash earned shadily.
Right. Peace, security. And what's the big roadblock to that kind of integrity?
Oh, definitely pride. Verse 5 calls the proud an abomination, and verse 18 is maybe the most famous one.
Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. Yeah, you hear that one a lot.
And for good reason. It's a recurring warning because pride it blinds us, makes us think we know it all, don't need advice.
So stop listening, stop learning.
Pretty much. Verse 20 hints at that the one who listens to instruction prospers. Pride blocks that. The alternative, verse 19 says, is being lowly in spirit. Humility. Being teachable.
Which connects to the next big theme, wisdom itself. It's valued incredibly highly here. Verse 16 puts it bluntly.
How much better to get wisdom than gold? To choose understanding rather than silver. It's a deliberate choice.
So it's not just abstract knowledge, it's something practical you actively get.
Yes, exactly. Practical and life-giving. Verse 22 calls understanding a fountain of life. And look how it links to communication in verse 23.
A wise man's heart guides his mouth, and his lips promote instruction. So wisdom shapes how we speak.
Right. And the power of words is all over this chapter. Not just God's reply in verse 1, but our words too. Verse 24 gives that lovely image.
Oh, yeah. Pleasant words are like a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones.
Beautiful, isn't it? Words can build up, heal. But the flip side is there too. The scorching fire of a scoundrel's words in verse 27, or how perverse talk stirs up conflict in verse 28.
Shows how what's inside wisdom or malice comes out in our speech and affects everything around us. Even keeping your temper, verse 32, is framed as strength.
It all connects. Inner state, outer actions, words.
Okay, so wrapping this up. We've seen this tension. We plan, but the outcome isn't fully ours. We've seen the absolute need for integrity, good motives,
The danger of pride versus the value of humility and wisdom.
and how that inner reality shapes our words, for good or ill.
Yeah. The core message seems to be focus on cultivating that inner character. Righteousness, humility, wisdom, Plan your course, work hard, sure, but hold those plans with a certain openness, knowing you're not the only factor.
It's about choosing understanding, choosing the right way, even if it seems less profitable upfront, because that's where real life and peace are found.
Well put. It challenges that surface level view of success.
So the thought to leave you with then, starting from that verse 9, in his heart a man plans his course, but the Lord determines his steps. How does really wrestling with that tension change how you go about making plans for your own life?